The Belmont Gallery on Fifth Avenue was the kind of place where silence felt expensive. Every footstep echoed softly against polished marble floors. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars above glass counters filled with watches that cost more than most people's homes. The air smelled faintly of leather, citrus cologne, and quiet confidence, the scent of people who never checked price tags. Damien Caldwell stood at the center of it all. At 46, Damien was known across Wall Street and Silicon Valley as one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. Founder of a data security empire, frequent guest at Davos, and a regular name on Forbes lists, he wore wealth the way others wore coats, without thinking about it. His charcoal suit was tailored within an inch of perfection. His watch, already worth 6 figures, glinted under the lights as he rested his hand on the counter. "I'll take it," Damien said calmly. The sales associate, a man named Gregory with silver hair and a polite smile, nodded eagerly. Inside the glass case lay the item Damien had pointed to, a limited edition Swiss timepiece, only 12 ever made, valued at just over $52,000. Gregory slid the watch out carefully as though handling a newborn. "Excellent choice, sir. If you'll just tap or insert your card." Damien reached into his jacket and pulled out his black card, the kind that rarely got declined, the kind people whispered about. He placed it on the counter without ceremony. A small crowd had begun to gather nearby. In places like Belmont, luxury attracted spectators the way fire attracted moths. A woman in designer heels pretended to examine earrings while clearly listening. A couple near the entrance slowed their pace. Gregory inserted the card. The machine hummed. Beep. Gregory's smile faltered, just slightly. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, tapping the screen again. "It seems the transaction didn't go through. Let me try once more." Damien frowned. "That won't be necessary. It's a system error." Gregory nodded quickly, trying again. Beep. This time the sound was louder, sharper. Final. Declined. The word glowed red on the screen like an accusation. The silence thickened. Damien felt heat creep up his neck. He straightened his shoulders, forcing calm into his voice. "Run it again." Gregory hesitated. "Sir, the system is confirming insufficient authorization." A whisper rippled through the store. Damien's jaw tightened. This didn't happen. Not to him. His accounts were monitored daily, sometimes hourly. He'd closed deals worth hundreds of millions without blinking. Across the room, a man leaned casually against a display case, pretending to scroll on his phone. Trevor Langford, Damien's longtime business rival. Damien caught the faint smirk tugging at Trevor's mouth. So he was here. Of course he was. Damien felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Not fear. Not anger. Humiliation. "I'll step aside," Damien said coolly, pulling his card back. "Clearly your system needs attention." Gregory nodded, flustered. "Of course, sir. We sincerely apologize." Damien turned away from the counter, every step heavier than the last. The murmurs followed him like shadows. Then he heard a small voice. "Mister." He stopped. Damien turned to see a little black girl standing near the accessories aisle. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old. Her hair was neatly braided, tiny beads clicking softly as she moved. She wore a faded denim jacket and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. Beside her stood a woman, likely her mother, holding a shopping basket filled with notebooks, pencils, and a single pair of discounted shoes. The girl looked up at Damien, her dark eyes wide, curious, not mocking. "Are you okay?" she asked. Damien blinked, caught off guard. Of all the reactions he'd expected, pity, judgment, laughter, this wasn't one of them. "I'm fine," he said curtly. The girl tilted her head. It didn't look fine. Her mother immediately stiffened. "Zara," she whispered sharply. "Don't bother the gentleman." "It's okay," Damien said, though his tone remained distant. Zara glanced at the counter, then back at him. "Your card didn't work." "Yes," Damien replied flatly. "I noticed." She hesitated, then did something strange. She smiled. Not a mocking smile. Not a knowing one. A gentle smile. "My mom says sometimes things don't work because they're not supposed to," Zara said. Or because something better is about to happen. Damien almost laughed. Almost. That's an interesting theory, he said. Zara reached into her jacket pocket. Her mother gasped. Zara, no. But the girl was already pulling something out. A small, worn pink wallet. Damien's brows knitted together as Zara opened it, carefully counting a stack of crumpled bills and coins. She held them out toward him with both hands. You can use mine, she said softly. I was saving it, but you looked sad. The world seemed to tilt. Damien stared at the money, no more than a few $dozen, and then at the girl holding it. His throat tightened, words failing him for the first time in years. Behind them, Trevor Langford's smirk slowly faded. And Damien realized with a sudden chill that this moment, this humiliating, impossible moment, was about to change everything. But he had no idea how far. Damien stood frozen, staring at the little girl who had just extended her meager savings toward him. The noise of the Belmont Gallery seemed to fade, replaced by the thumping of his own heartbeat. How could he, a billionaire accustomed to bending the world to his will, accept money from a 9-year-old? Zara's mother, Clara Williams, stepped forward, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Zara, honey, that's enough. Let the gentleman handle his own business. Her voice was gentle but firm, tinged with worry. It's okay, Mom, Zara said, her voice unwavering. I want to help him. He looked really sad. Damien cleared his throat, struggling to regain composure. I appreciate the thought, he said cautiously, his voice tight. But you shouldn't. This is far too much for a child to be carrying. Zara tilted her head, eyes wide, unafraid. Then maybe you need it more than I do. The statement hit Damien like a punch. Need it more than she did? For the first time in decades, the world didn't feel like it revolved around him. Here was a little girl, struggling to save for her mother's birthday, offering him her only chance at dignity in a public humiliation. He looked down at the small stack of bills in her tiny hands. $20, $30, maybe $40. Not nearly enough to buy a luxury watch, but it wasn't about the money. It was about her heart. Gregory, the sales associate, cleared his throat awkwardly, his eyes darting between Damien and the girl. Sir, if I may, perhaps we could hold the item until your account issues are resolved? Damien waved him off. No, thank you. His gaze returned to Zara. I can't accept this. But you're brave to offer. Zara smiled faintly. Sometimes brave is all we have. There was a pause. Damien's pride warred with something he hadn't felt in years, an overwhelming pull of empathy and strangely responsibility. He looked at Clara, who now had a quiet, expectant expression, unsure of what Damien would do next. And then it happened. Damien surprised himself by asking, Would you come with me? Zara's brows shot up. Come with you? Yes, Damien said, trying to keep his tone neutral. I need advice. Zara's mother frowned slightly, but Clara sensed something different in Damien's voice, a sincerity she hadn't expected. After a moment, she nodded. All right, Zara, be careful. Remember what I taught you. Zara grabbed her little backpack and followed Damien to his black SUV parked just outside the gallery. The streets of Manhattan were alive with the evening rush, honking taxis, and pedestrians moving in a rhythmic chaos. Damien navigated through traffic, stealing glances at Zara, who seemed entirely at ease in the city that could easily swallow her whole. Why are you sad? She asked after a long silence, her small fingers fidgeting with the zipper of her backpack. Damien exhaled, a sound of frustration and disbelief. It's complicated. Zara tilted her head. Complicated is when you feel like no one can help you, right? Her words struck a nerve. He realized she was right. For all his billions, Damien felt exactly that, helpless in front of something he hadn't anticipated, human vulnerability exposed. He glanced at her again. Do you want to see something? She nodded. When Damien pulled up to a small, sleek cafe in Soho, the lights glowing warmly against the cold evening, Zara's eyes widened. It wasn't just any cafe, it was a private, members-only location, one that catered to the city's elite. Yet inside, Damien looked smaller than usual. He had to explain himself to someone, and somehow, a 9-year-old seemed the safest choice. He led her to a quiet corner. The smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans filled the air. He sat down, and Zara perched on a chair opposite him, legs swinging, her gaze unwavering. "All right," Damien said, taking a deep breath. "This card decline, it's not just a technical glitch. Someone I trusted, tried to sabotage me." Zara frowned. "Sabotage?" "Yes. My business rival, Jordan Hayes. He wanted to humiliate me publicly before a big deal tomorrow. I didn't see it coming." Zara's small lips pursed. "That's mean. Really mean." Damien's eyes softened as he studied her face. There was no judgment there, only clarity and innocence, an honesty adults rarely offered. "It is mean," he admitted, "and it's complicated. But watching you just now, offering your savings, it made me think. Maybe I've been doing this all wrong. Maybe." He hesitated, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Maybe there's more to life than money and control." Zara's eyes sparkled. "There is. Mom says life's about helping people, even when it's hard." A quiet understanding passed between them, a connection that defied age or wealth. Damien felt a strange warmth, something he hadn't felt in years. "Zara," he said slowly, "I want to make this right. For me and maybe for you too." Her eyes widened. "You want to help me?" Damien nodded. "Yes. But it has to be a secret, okay? Something just between us for now." Zara grinned, her eyes lighting up. "I like secrets. They're exciting." Damien allowed himself a small smile. He couldn't know yet how exciting and life-changing this secret would be. As they left the cafe together, a black SUV waiting silently outside, Damien felt an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. And deep down, a nagging sense of urgency. Because someone was watching. From across the street, a shadowed figure leaned against a lamppost, phone in hand. Trevor Langford. Smirking. Waiting. Observing. And for Damien, the real test was only beginning. The billionaire may have found a kindred spirit in a little girl, but outside, danger lurked, and the smallest act of kindness might set off consequences he hadn't imagined. The streets of Soho were quieter now, the rush of pedestrians thinning as night settled over Manhattan. Damien's black SUV slid through the glowing city, its headlights reflecting off wet asphalt from an earlier drizzle. Inside, the atmosphere was a strange mixture of tension and curiosity. Zara, normally full of energy, sat quietly in the back seat, her small hands folded neatly in her lap. Damien stole glances at her in the rearview mirror. She was a paradox, so young, yet carrying the kind of wisdom most adults spent a lifetime searching for. "Are you always this brave?" Damien asked after a long silence, his voice low, almost uncertain. Zara tilted her head, thinking. "No, but I try to be. Mom says bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about doing what's right even when you are." Damien let out a quiet laugh, a sound that startled him with its rawness. Most people feared him, bowed to him, or flattered him. But here, in the confines of his SUV, he felt a strange vulnerability, and it was both thrilling and terrifying. "You're wise beyond your years," Damien admitted. "And fearless. I haven't met anyone like you before." Zara smiled faintly. "I meet lots of people. Most of them forget what's important. You don't seem like most people." Damien's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. He wasn't sure whether to be flattered or defensive. "I try," he said, his tone flat. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of something he rarely allowed himself to feel, hope. As they turned onto a quieter street, the SUV slowed near a small townhouse in Brooklyn. It wasn't fancy, brick walls slightly worn, the fire escape rusting in patches, but it exuded warmth, home, and resilience. Damien hadn't expected to be touched by the sight of modest living, but seeing it through Zara's world made him pause. "Here we are," Zara said softly. Clara, Zara's mother, stepped out to greet them, her expression a mixture of surprise and caution. "Damien, what are you doing here?" He straightened, clearing his throat. "I wanted to talk about something important. But it's private, just between us three." Clara hesitated, then nodded. All right. Just make sure Zara is safe. Inside the small, cozy living room, the conversation unfolded. Damien explained, carefully without revealing too much, about the card decline, the humiliation, and the sabotage attempt by Trevor Langford. Clara listened silently, eyes narrowing slightly when Damien mentioned his rival's name. Zara perched on the edge of the couch, listening intently. So, that's why you looked so sad at the store, she said finally. Damien nodded. Exactly. I realized something important. Money isn't everything. I've built walls around myself and maybe I forgot how to really connect with people. Zara tilted her head. You want to help? Damien hesitated. Yes, but I don't know where to start. I don't even know what real help looks like. Zara's eyes lit up. I can show you. And that's when the first seeds of a plan took root. Zara led Damien to a corner of her room, pointing to a small pile of notebooks and papers. These are all the things I wish we had at school, she said. Books, computers, our library is old and falling apart. Some kids never even get pencils. I wanted to raise money, but I can't do it alone. Damien felt a pang in his chest. He had thousands of ways to give, yet here was a little girl using a handful of change and a brave heart, trying to fix something she cared about deeply. I think we can fix that, Damien said quietly, almost to himself. Zara's face lit up, but before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Clara frowned. Who could that be this late? Damien glanced at the window, then back at the small mother-daughter duo. I'll handle this. When he opened the door, a familiar smirk greeted him. Trevor Langford, leaning casually against the frame, phone in hand, radiating confidence and malice. Well, Damien, Trevor drawled. Never thought I'd find you here. And, with a child? Damien's jaw tightened. Trevor, what do you want? Trevor's gaze flicked to Zara, lingering far too long. Oh, nothing, just checking in. You know, making sure you're keeping your priorities straight. His eyes glinted with mischief. You wouldn't want your public image to be ruined by financial embarrassment. Wouldn't want the world to see you relying on child's money, would you? Zara, sensing the tension, stepped slightly in front of her mother. Who are you? She asked, voice firm. Trevor's smirk didn't falter. I'm a friend. Concerned about the rich man who forgot how to manage his life. Damien stepped forward, placing himself between Trevor and Zara. Enough, he said, voice low and dangerous. Leave. Trevor chuckled, backing away. We'll see how long your little secret lasts. With that, he turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the shadows. The door closed. Silence. Zara looked up at Damien. He didn't like me. Damien exhaled, rubbing his temples. No, he didn't. But don't worry, we'll deal with him. Later. Zara's tiny hand reached up, touching his arm. You're brave too, she said softly. Damien blinked, touched in a way words couldn't capture. A warmth spread through him, a strange mixture of pride and vulnerability. But even as they settled back into the living room, a quiet tension lingered. Trevor's warning wasn't idle chatter, it was a promise. And Damien, for the first time in decades, felt truly vulnerable. He realized then, helping Zara and her community wasn't going to be simple. There would be obstacles, sabotage, and difficult choices. And the more he gave, the more dangerous it might become. As Damien sat back, staring at Zara's hopeful face, he couldn't shake a growing unease. Something was coming, something big, something that could change everything. Outside, unseen, a car slowly cruised past the townhouse, and Trevor's shadowy figure lingered at the corner. Damien's moment of connection with Zara and Clara might be about to collide with a storm he hadn't anticipated. The following morning, Brooklyn was alive with the soft sounds of life waking up, car horns echoing faintly, the hum of delivery trucks, the clatter of a nearby cafe opening for its first customers. Damien Caldwell sat in his sleek Manhattan office, staring blankly at the screens before him. Emails, stock reports, and notifications blurred together into an incomprehensible wall of numbers. Yet none of it mattered. His mind wasn't on business. It was on a little girl in Brooklyn who had offered him her savings. who had smiled at him when he felt humiliated, who had reminded him of something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He glanced at his phone, which had a text message from Zara. "Good morning. Did you sleep okay? I made breakfast for Mom today." A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. She was fearless, kind, and insistent on seeing the good in the world. And she wanted him to see it too. Damien rubbed his temples. He knew what he had to do. He had to make a gesture, not just for Zara but for Clara and the community she represented. He called his assistant, ignoring her usual protocol. "Cancel my morning meetings. I'm going to Brooklyn." By 10 a.m., Damien was driving through the winding streets of Brooklyn again. The contrast between his polished black SUV and the brick townhouses around him was striking. Here, wealth wasn't flaunted, it was understated, modest, and in many cases hard-earned. He parked in front of Clara and Zara's home. The door opened before he could knock. Clara's face reflected surprise and a hint of skepticism. "Damien, what are you doing here so early?" I wanted to help," Damien said simply, the words feeling strange on his tongue. Not just words. Actual help. Zara peeked from behind her mother's legs, eyes wide. "You're here." Damien crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "Yes. And I brought something for you." He reached into the back of his SUV and pulled out a small box. Inside were new books, pencils, and a tablet with educational apps preloaded. Everything Zara had listed from her school wishlist the night before. Her jaw dropped. "You did this?" "I did," Damien said softly. "For you. And for your school. But there's one thing," he hesitated, looking at Clara. "I'd like it to be anonymous. I don't want it to come from me. I just want it to help." Zara's face lit up, a mixture of disbelief and pure joy. "Oh, Mom. Look." She practically leaped forward, hugging the books to her chest. Clara's eyes widened. "This is incredible. But how?" Damien only smiled faintly. "Consider it a small gesture. I'll be going now." As Damien left Brooklyn and returned to Manhattan, he felt a sense of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. Business deals, power plays, and Forbes lists, none of it compared to the feeling of truly making a difference in someone's life. But as he merged onto the FDR drive, his phone buzzed with an alert. A new notification from a private email address he didn't recognize. Subject: "Did you really think it would be that simple?" Damien's heart sank. The email contained a single sentence. "Zara Williams will change everything you know about control. Judge Trevor Langford." The realization hit him like a punch. Everything he had done to help, every act of kindness, could now be weaponized against him. He had unknowingly stepped into Trevor's game. Meanwhile, back in Brooklyn, Zara and Clara were organizing the donated supplies. Zara's classmates squealed in excitement as pencils were sharpened and books were arranged neatly in the library corner. "It's perfect," one of the teachers exclaimed. "Whoever did this, wow. Thank you." Zara smiled, but her eyes kept drifting toward the window. She sensed something, like a shadow hovering at the edge of her happiness. "Mom, what if someone finds out who did this?" Clara knelt beside her. "Then we'll handle it, sweetheart. Right now, enjoy it. You helped make it happen, and that's what matters." Zara nodded but felt a strange twinge of unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to be interrupted by forces they hadn't anticipated. Back in Manhattan, Damien sat alone in his office, reviewing his emails with growing anxiety. Trevor's warning wasn't just about Zara, it was about control, power, and humiliation. If Trevor succeeded, Damien's reputation could crumble, and everything he'd worked for could unravel. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the city skyline. The weight of responsibility pressed down harder than any board meeting or hostile takeover. And yet, a small, persistent hope lingered. He thought of Zara's smile, the way her small hand had reached out for him at the gallery, the bravery in her voice. She had changed something in him already, something he hadn't thought possible. If Trevor wanted a battle, Damien would fight it. Not for money. Not for reputation. But for Zara, for Clara, and for the kind of world he realized he had the power to create, one small act of kindness at a time. That evening, Damien received another text from Zara. "Thank you. I promise we'll take care of everything. You're our secret helper. Don't worry." He smiled, but a shadow of doubt lingered. How long could their secret last? And what would Trevor do next? Across town, in a sleek black sedan, Trevor Langford's eyes narrowed at his laptop screen. The billionaire's acts of kindness weren't just being noticed, they were being monitored. And Trevor had a plan that could turn generosity into disaster. The following week in Manhattan was unusually quiet for Damien Caldwell. The skyline glimmered like diamonds against the early morning fog, but the beauty of the city didn't reach him. Every decision felt heavier than the last, every email and notification a reminder that his life, and now Zara's, was being watched. He sat in his office, reviewing reports, yet his mind kept drifting back to Brooklyn. To Zara. To the smile of a child who had reminded him of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Your little charity project is causing attention and complications." J.H. Damien's stomach turned. Trevor. Always Trevor. Even from miles away, he found a way to instill doubt, fear, and pressure. But Damien had learned one thing about himself over the years. He didn't back down. Not now. Not with Zara involved. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Zara and Clara were navigating the whirlwind of their small secret's impact. The supplies Damien had sent sparked excitement across the school. Students who had never touched a new book before now had stacks to read. Pencils that had been scavenged from donations now sat neatly in boxes. The teachers were ecstatic. Zara watched from the library window as kids laughed and shared, their voices carrying across the playground. A warmth settled in her chest. For the first time, she felt the power of small actions. "Mom, we did something amazing," she whispered. Clara smiled softly. "Yes, we did, Zara. And someone very special helped make it happen." Zara's eyes brightened. "I hope he knows it matters. Every little bit." Unbeknownst to them, someone was already taking notice. Back in Manhattan, Damien received a call from his CFO, a stern woman named Eleanor Brooks. "Damien, I'm concerned. We've noticed some irregular financial activity. Large transfers to anonymous accounts, unusual patterns. It's subtle, but it's there. Someone might be trying to manipulate the public perception of your wealth." Damien's heart skipped. "Do you think Trevor?" Eleanor hesitated. "It's possible. But whoever it is, they're careful. Very careful." Damien leaned back in his chair. Carefully, yes, but not careful enough to stop him from noticing. He realized that his attempt at kindness to secretly support Zara's school could now be twisted into a story of scandal or manipulation. His thoughts raced. How could he protect her? How could he make sure his actions didn't backfire? Later that day, Damien decided to take a risk. He returned to Brooklyn, this time unannounced. He needed to see Zara to ensure she was safe, and to reinforce the lesson he had seen in her: courage, empathy, and perseverance. He parked a block away and walked toward Clara and Zara's home. As he approached, he noticed a man lingering nearby, leaning against a streetlight. Damien's heart sank. The silhouette was familiar. Trevor. Damien quickly ducked into an alleyway, his mind racing. He couldn't let Trevor see him interacting with Zara. Not yet. The girl had no idea of the dangers she might face. Inside, Zara was finishing up a small project for her school library, arranging books and cataloging supplies. Clara was on the phone, organizing community volunteers to help maintain the new materials. "Mom," Zara said suddenly, "I think someone's watching." Clara froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I just feel it. Like shadows are following the good things we're doing." Clara's face paled. "Zara, don't jump to conclusions." But Zara's intuition was rarely wrong. She glanced toward the window, just in time to see a shadow slip behind a corner. Damien had made it back to his office without being seen, but the encounter left him unsettled. He poured himself a glass of water, staring at the city lights. The first act of kindness he had shown, to help a school to empower a little girl, was now a target. Trevor was more dangerous than he had imagined. The thought of what could happen if Trevor discovered Zara's identity made his chest tighten. And yet, Damien knew he couldn't retreat. He had a choice: protect his reputation or protect Zara and Clara. And for the first time the answer was clear. He would do both, but it would require careful planning, patience, and perhaps risks he hadn't faced in years. That night, as Damien reviewed security footage around Brooklyn and monitored unusual activity online, he received a photo via an encrypted email. It showed Zara standing in the library, smiling, holding a book with Damien's name scribbled inside. But in the background, barely visible, a figure lurked, watching, waiting, analyzing. Trevor's signature smirk glinted in the shadow. Damien's hand tightened around the edge of the desk. He had underestimated him. He realized with growing dread that the challenges ahead weren't just about business, they were personal. About innocence, courage, and trust. Damien knew one thing for certain: to protect Zara and the good they had started, he would need to outsmart Trevor, and fast. But how do you outsmart someone who already seems 2 steps ahead of you? Before the story takes a turn you won't expect, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The morning sun hadn't even risen over Manhattan when Damien Caldwell was already at his desk, reviewing plans and security protocols. The city looked peaceful from his office window, but Damien knew better. Danger lurked in shadows, and Trevor Langford's recent maneuvers had made that abundantly clear. Damien rubbed his temples, sipping strong black coffee. Protecting Zara and her mother while keeping his own life intact would require careful precision. Every decision he made now carried weight, not just for him but for a little girl who had reminded him of something he'd nearly forgotten: humanity. He opened a secure video feed he had installed around Zara's neighborhood the previous evening. Every street corner, every alleyway, every potential vantage point was being monitored. There, half hidden behind a lamppost, a shadow moved. Damien froze. Trevor was already near. Back in Brooklyn, Zara and Clara were unaware of the danger that had crept so close. Zara was in her room, flipping through the donated books Damien had sent, her eyes wide with wonder. Clara was on the phone, arranging additional volunteer support for the school library. The hum of normal life masked the brewing threat. Zara's thoughts kept returning to Damien's gesture. "Mom, do you think he'll help more kids?" she asked softly. Clara smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. "He's already helped a lot. But remember, it's not just about money. It's about courage too." Zara nodded, a determination forming in her young heart. She didn't realize that courage would soon be tested in ways she had never imagined. Meanwhile, Damien made calls to his most trusted allies. One by one, advisors, security consultants, and legal experts joined his covert team. The goal was simple: protect Zara and Clara, prevent Trevor from exploiting any of Damien's actions, and ensure that the goodwill they had begun in Brooklyn could continue uninterrupted. By late morning, a plan had begun to take shape. Damien would make his presence in Brooklyn appear accidental while discreetly monitoring Trevor's movements. He would also establish a small, anonymous network of support for Zara's school, ensuring that supplies and resources could be replenished without public attention. But Damien knew one thing: Trevor wouldn't stop at observation. The man thrived on chaos, humiliation, and control. Whatever Damien put into motion would be challenged, tested, and twisted. That afternoon, Damien returned to Brooklyn, this time in an unmarked vehicle. The streets were bustling, but he navigated them with precision. He parked several blocks away and walked casually, keeping an eye on the surroundings. Zara noticed him from the library window and waved excitedly. Damien raised a hand subtly, motioning for her to stay calm. Inside the library, Damien approached Clara quietly. "I'm here to check on the school and make sure everything is safe," he whispered. Clara frowned slightly. "You don't have to do that, we're fine." Damien shook his head. "I know, but someone's been watching. I need to make sure you and Zara aren't caught off guard." Before Clara could respond, a figure appeared at the end of the street. Damien froze, recognizing Trevor's tall frame. He was casually observing the library, his phone raised, presumably recording. "Stay calm," Damien whispered. "I've got this." As Damien subtly positioned himself between Trevor and the library, Zara suddenly ran to the window, curious. "Who's that?" she asked innocently. Damien's jaw tightened. No one you need to worry about, he said firmly. But he knew better. Trevor wasn't just anyone. And Zara's curiosity might unintentionally draw attention. In a split-second decision, Damien stepped into view, startling Trevor. "Hello, Trevor," he said calmly, though his heart pounded. Trevor's smirk widened. "Caldwell. Fancy seeing you here. Protecting your little friend, are we?" Damien didn't respond immediately. Instead, he subtly signaled to Clara and Zara to step away from the windows. Then, with a sudden, confident stride, he approached Trevor, closing the distance between them. "Is this a friendly visit?" Damien asked, his voice steady but firm. Trevor laughed softly. "Friendly? Not really. But I am curious. You've been generous lately. Helping the neighborhood, a little girl, anonymous donations. I have to say it's interesting." "Interesting?" Damien echoed. "Or dangerous?" Trevor's smirk faltered for a split second. "Call it potential leverage. You'll see." With that, Trevor turned and walked away slowly, his eyes never leaving Damien. But this time Damien was ready. He knew Trevor's moves, he had anticipated the surveillance, and he had already set a few of his own traps in motion. That evening, as Damien returned to his Manhattan office, he reviewed the day's events. The school was safe, Zara was unaware of how close danger had come, and Trevor's attempt to intimidate had been neutralized, at least for now. Yet Damien knew the real challenge had only just begun. Every act of kindness he performed, every secret support he provided could be used against him, or against Zara. He poured himself a glass of water, staring at the city lights. The night was quiet, but Damien knew that tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, Trevor would keep coming. Somewhere in the shadows of Manhattan, Trevor Langford's phone buzzed. A live feed from Brooklyn showed the little girl smiling as she arranged books in the library. And Trevor whispered to himself, "You think you're in control, Caldwell, but this is only the beginning." The weekend in Brooklyn arrived with a quiet, almost deceptive calm. The streets were lined with autumn leaves, golden and orange under the soft sunlight, children laughing as they played in the parks, and neighbors exchanging greetings over fences. On the surface, life seemed simple, ordinary, and safe. But Damien Caldwell knew better. Danger had a way of creeping in when it was least expected. He parked his unmarked vehicle a block away from Clara and Zara's townhouse, careful to blend in with the Saturday crowd. Damien had promised himself that today he would focus not on monitoring threats, not on business, but on something he hadn't allowed himself in years: connecting. Truly connecting with Zara. Zara met him at the small corner of the library where the newly donated books now sat in neat stacks. She grinned as soon as she saw him. "You came." "I promised I'd check in," Damien said, smiling faintly. "Besides, I wanted to see how the library project was going." Her excitement was infectious. "It's amazing. Everyone loves the books. And we even started a little reading circle. I'm going to read to the younger kids tomorrow." Damien watched her, struck by the contrast between her tiny frame and the enormous heart she carried. Here was a child who had already faced more than many adults, and she approached life with courage, hope, and determination. "You're remarkable," Damien said quietly. "You know that, right?" Zara shrugged, a little embarrassed by the compliment. "I just do what I can. I want to help people." Damien nodded slowly, thinking about the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. A declined credit card, a moment of embarrassment, and now, a partnership that felt more meaningful than any business deal he had ever closed. But just as Damien was about to ask Zara more about her plans, Clara appeared at the library doorway. Her expression was tight with concern. "Damien, something happened at the school this morning." "What?" Damien's heart sank instantly. "One of the teachers said some of the supplies were moved, and then someone left a note. They didn't see who it was, but the note, it said, 'Be careful who you trust.'" Damien froze. His mind raced. Trevor Langford. Of course. The man had to be behind this. Did anyone else see anything? He asked. Clara shook her head. No. Just the note. But Zara, you don't know anything about this, right? Zara shook her head, oblivious to the brewing storm. Damien sighed inwardly. She couldn't know. Not yet. Later that afternoon, Damien returned to Manhattan, reviewing his options. Trevor's subtle intimidation had escalated into something more direct. He was no longer content with observing. He wanted to manipulate, control, and provoke fear. Damien realized that a calculated move was necessary, but it had to be executed without endangering Zara or her mother. He called in one of his most trusted aides, Marcus, a former intelligence officer who had handled sensitive security operations. Marcus, we need to create a protective perimeter for Brooklyn. Not obvious, not intrusive, but strong enough that Trevor doesn't have any way to manipulate Zara's life. Marcus nodded. I can set up discreet surveillance, track unusual activity, and monitor communications. But we'll need to keep Damien Caldwell off the radar as much as possible. Damien agreed. Do it. And make it subtle. I don't want to scare her or Clara. Back in Brooklyn, Zara sat in the library with a small group of students, reading aloud from one of Damien's donated books. The warmth of their laughter filled the room. For a moment, the world outside seemed harmless, kind, and simple. Then Zara noticed the shadow in the window across the street. A figure leaning casually, watching. Her small chest tightened. She hadn't seen him clearly, but something about the stance, the way he lingered, it felt wrong. She pulled Clara aside. Mom, he's back. Someone's watching us. Clara's eyes widened. Zara, don't jump to conclusions. Zara shook her head. No, Mom. I know this feeling. It's the same as before. That evening, Damien returned to his apartment in Manhattan, weary but determined. He sat at his desk, reviewing the day's events, and then his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. Caldwell, a familiar voice whispered. Trevor. Damien's voice was calm, measured. What do you want? Just to remind you, Trevor said, the smirk audible in his tone. Even acts of kindness can be dangerous. You think you're protecting them, but every step you take exposes them further. Damien didn't flinch. Zara isn't a pawn. She's a child. And I won't let you manipulate her life to serve your ego. Trevor laughed softly, menacingly. You'll see. And soon your little secret helper will be forced into a choice you can't control. The line went dead. Damien's jaw clenched. The threat wasn't empty. Trevor was already setting the pieces in motion, testing boundaries, preparing for the moment when the smallest act of kindness could be turned into chaos. That night, as Damien reviewed plans to reinforce Brooklyn's safety and ensure Zara remained oblivious to the looming danger, he thought about the little girl who had changed everything. She had given him courage, hope, and a new perspective on life. And now it was his turn to protect her, no matter the cost. But one question lingered, gnawing at him like a shadow. How far would Trevor go? And when the inevitable moment came, would Zara's bravery be enough to withstand the storm he was about to unleash? Across the city, in a high-rise overlooking Brooklyn, Trevor watched the little girl through a pair of binoculars. You think you're safe, Caldwell? He muttered. But every hero has a weakness, and I'm about to find hers. The week began quietly in Brooklyn, deceptively calm. The streets were filled with children heading to school, the hum of traffic, and the occasional bark of a dog echoing across quiet alleyways. For Zara, it was another ordinary morning filled with the excitement of school and the little responsibilities she had taken on since Damien's first act of kindness. She carefully arranged the new books in the library, her fingers tracing the spines as if each one held a secret promise. The students around her whispered and laughed, their voices full of the innocence she cherished. To them, this library was more than a collection of books. It was a gateway to a better life, a small haven in a world that often felt too big. Zara, can you help me with this? One of her classmates asked. Zara smiled. Of course. Yet even as she leaned down to organize the materials, she felt it, a subtle shift in the air, a prickling sense of being watched. Across the street, half hidden behind the corner of a brick building, Trevor Langford lingered. His dark coat blended into the early morning shadows, and his phone was raised, recording every movement in the library. His lips curved into a slow, menacing smile. "Enjoy it while it lasts, little girl," he muttered under his breath. "Every hero has a weakness, and you're about to reveal yours." Trevor wasn't just watching. He was plotting. Every donation, every act of kindness from Damien Caldwell was being scrutinized, cataloged, and analyzed. Trevor's plan was simple yet insidious: turn Damien's generosity into leverage, create chaos, and humiliate the billionaire in a way he could never anticipate. Meanwhile, Damien was in Manhattan, unaware of the intensity of Trevor's presence. He had spent the early morning strategizing, coordinating with Marcus and his security team, setting up discreet cameras and preparing contingency plans. But something in his gut gnawed at him, a sense that today the stakes were higher than ever. He sent a quick text to Clara. "Make sure Zara stays inside the library for now. I'm monitoring from here." Clara nodded as she read the message, concern etched into her features. She had grown to trust Damien, but Trevor Langford was a threat she couldn't ignore. She ushered the students into a tighter circle, moving Zara closer to the center. The hours passed with a tense rhythm. Trevor remained outside, shifting occasionally, never breaking eye contact with the library. He was patient, methodical. He didn't need to act yet. The fear he was instilling was already doing the work for him. Inside, Zara felt the unease, though she couldn't see Trevor. "Mom? I think someone's out there," she whispered. Clara placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know, sweetie. Just stay calm. You're safe." Damien has eyes everywhere. Zara's chest tightened. She didn't like feeling watched. Not like this. Not when it was personal. Back in Manhattan, Damien's phone buzzed. A camera feed from the library popped up. His stomach sank as he saw the shadow lingering across the street. Trevor. He leaned back, clenching his fists. This wasn't just about observation anymore. Trevor was escalating. Damien knew he had to act fast before any harm could come to Zara or Clara. He pulled out his secure line and called Marcus. "We need a mobile unit near the library. Quiet. No sirens. Just observation and backup if necessary." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied immediately. Within minutes, 2 black SUVs quietly stationed themselves on neighboring streets, cameras and security personnel scanning the area. Trevor had no idea Damien had anticipated him. Inside the library, Zara's intuition sharpened. Something felt wrong, more than just the subtle prickling of unease. She turned toward the window, catching a glimpse of a figure in a dark coat. Her heart raced. "Mom, that's him," she whispered, pointing. Clara's eyes widened. "Stay calm, Zara. Move away from the windows." Zara obeyed, feeling a strange mix of fear and defiance. She wanted to stand her ground, to be brave, but she also knew that sometimes bravery meant following instructions. The tension outside thickened. Trevor, sensing Damien's countermeasures, paused. He realized the billionaire was aware of his presence. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Trevor wasn't used to being outmaneuvered, but the thought of disrupting Damien's carefully crafted image of benevolence kept him smirking. "This is far from over, Caldwell," Trevor muttered under his breath. "I'll find a way to break your little world." Hours later, the students left, and the library fell silent. Zara and Clara were alone, exhausted but relieved. The shadow had finally retreated, but Damien knew better. Trevor's patience was dangerous, his strategies cunning. Damien called Clara again. "I want you both to stay inside tonight. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm going to monitor everything." "Yes, Damien," Clara replied, her voice tight with worry. Zara looked at Damien's name flashing on the screen. "He's helping us, again," she whispered, a mix of relief and gratitude in her tone. As night fell over Brooklyn, Damien sat in his Manhattan apartment, reviewing the day's surveillance footage. Trevor's face lingered on the screen, a constant reminder that danger was only moments away from becoming real. Damien knew one thing: he couldn't let Trevor touch Zara. He couldn't allow the little girl who had changed his life to become a pawn in someone else's game. But deep down, he also knew that the true battle had only just begun. Trevor's next move would come soon, and when it did, Damien would have to be ready. In the darkness of the city, Trevor's eyes glinted with anticipation. He was plotting something bigger than surveillance, something that could force Damien into a choice no billionaire wanted to make: protect his fortune or protect the little girl who had stolen his heart. The following morning dawned crisp and clear over Brooklyn, but the calm was deceptive. Damien Caldwell sat in his Manhattan office, eyes glued to multiple monitors displaying live feeds of the neighborhood around Zara's school and home. Every street corner, every alley, every shadow was scrutinized. Trevor Langford was patient, methodical, and unpredictable, a combination Damien had faced in business, but never in protecting an innocent child. His phone buzzed with a secure message: "He's making his move today. Stay alert." It was from Marcus, his trusted aide, the only one who truly understood the gravity of Trevor's threat. Damien exhaled, mentally preparing for what he feared most. Meanwhile, Zara bounded into the library, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Today was reading circle day, and she had been eagerly awaiting it all week. She carefully placed her books on the table and began arranging chairs for the younger students. The room buzzed with the laughter and chatter of kids, unaware of the storm brewing just outside. Clara lingered near the door, her eyes darting occasionally to the windows. "Zara, remember, stay inside and away from the windows," she reminded her softly. Zara nodded, though a small flutter of unease lingered in her stomach. Something felt off, though she couldn't put a finger on it. Across the street, Trevor Langford observed silently. Today, he had decided, would be his first act of interference. He wasn't satisfied with mere observation or intimidation. He wanted to make a statement, to test Damien's resolve, and to remind the billionaire that acts of kindness could have consequences. Trevor had a small device in hand, a tracking device that could send a subtle shock through electronic systems, enough to disrupt small alarms or communications. His plan was simple: create confusion, test the defenses, and see how Damien reacted. Back in Manhattan, Damien watched the feeds, noting a flicker of movement near the library. His pulse quickened. "Marcus, he's there. He's doing something. Now." Within seconds, the first alarms began to beep softly on Damien's monitors. A small electrical disruption had temporarily disabled the library's digital catalog system. It was subtle but noticeable, a message from Trevor, an unmistakable signature of malice. Inside the library, Zara's fingers brushed over the tablet when it suddenly flickered and went black. "Mom? The tablet's not working," she cried, panic rising in her voice. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Stay calm, Zara. Sit down." She quickly moved to assess the situation, but the temporary blackout was enough to make the young students anxious. Zara's small hands trembled as she tried to reboot the device. I think someone's messing with it," she whispered. Meanwhile, Damien's calm, calculated demeanor shifted into action. He contacted Marcus immediately. "Marcus, deploy the mobile unit now. Quietly. I want eyes on him before he escalates further." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. Within minutes, 2 unmarked SUVs were moving through the streets around the library, positions adjusted to cover every possible exit Trevor might use. Trevor, realizing his device's disruption had been noticed, smirked. "Caldwell, always 2 steps ahead," he muttered under his breath. But instead of retreating, he decided to escalate further, testing Damien's patience and resolve. In Brooklyn, Zara sat close to the younger children, her mind racing. She realized that this wasn't just a technical glitch. Someone had intentionally caused this. She didn't yet know who, but the familiar sense of danger prickled her spine. "Mom? I think it's him again," she whispered, her voice steady despite her fear. Clara's jaw clenched. "Stay calm. Don't look out the window. Trust me." Zara nodded, but her eyes betrayed a mix of worry and determination. She had faced fear before, and she wasn't going to let it control her. Outside, Trevor circled the library discreetly, watching reactions, testing limits. He didn't know Damien had positioned the mobile units, but he was determined to push boundaries. A single misstep, he thought, and he could cause chaos without entering the building. Back inside, Damien monitored everything. He could see Trevor's shadow through the street cameras. Calmly, he began issuing instructions to his team. Lock specific entry points, redirect traffic, and subtly signal local authorities to remain nearby without arousing suspicion. Every move was precise, calculated, but he also realized something vital. This was no longer just about him. Every child, every teacher, and most importantly, Zara's innocence was at stake. Hours later, as the students were picked up and the library quieted down, Damien instructed Clara to keep Zara inside for the remainder of the day. She mustn't see anything. Not yet. Clara agreed, though her concern was evident. I don't know how long this can last, she murmured. Damien placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll protect her. Whatever it takes. That night, Damien reviewed the footage, noting Trevor's movements and calculating the next possible steps. One thing was clear, Trevor wasn't done. He was meticulous, dangerous, and relentless. And he had already learned that acts of kindness could be both a blessing and a vulnerability. Damien leaned back, thinking of Zara, her bravery, and her unwavering spirit. He realized that this was no longer a simple battle. It was a war of wits, courage, and protection. And he would not let Trevor win. Across the city, Trevor sat in a darkened apartment, reviewing live footage of the library. Caldwell thinks he can protect her, but tomorrow she will face a choice that could change everything, he whispered, his eyes glinting with malicious anticipation. The morning sun barely touched the streets of Brooklyn, casting long shadows over the townhouses and sidewalks. It should have been a peaceful day, but for Damien Caldwell, unease had settled like a weight on his shoulders. Trevor Langford's moves had grown bolder, more personal, and Damien knew it was only a matter of time before the consequences of his generosity collided with his enemy's ambitions. He was already in his Manhattan office, reviewing live feeds from Brooklyn when Marcus buzzed his secure line. Sir, he's active. Trevor is near the school, Marcus warned, urgency in his tone. Damien's jaw tightened. Is Zara there? Yes, sir. And the library is occupied with students. He's testing the perimeter, measuring reactions. Damien's heart clenched. Every act of kindness he had shown to Zara, every secret donation, was now a double-edged sword. And he knew that Trevor wouldn't just stop at intimidation. In Brooklyn, Zara was finishing her reading circle when a loud knock echoed from the library door. The children froze and a hush fell over the room. Who's there? Clara called, her voice firm but cautious. A man's voice replied smoothly, almost convincingly, delivery for the library. Special package. Zara's eyes narrowed. She sensed something was wrong immediately. Mom? I don't trust him, she whispered. Clara hesitated, glancing at the box sitting just outside the door. Damien's warning to remain cautious echoed in her mind. She shook her head subtly, signaling to Zara to stay back. The man tried to push the box toward the door. Just a delivery, ma'am. Nothing to worry about. Zara took a deep breath and stepped forward, determination replacing fear. She grabbed the box with one hand and pulled it inside, then slammed the door behind her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to show it. Once the door was locked, Zara carefully inspected the package. Inside she found a set of expensive, personalized laptops, each engraved with the school's logo, but a small card lay on top, written in elegant, menacing handwriting. Caldwell's generosity has limits. Let's see how far she can go before the truth hurts. Yeah. Zara's hands shook as she realized the implication. Trevor had not only discovered Damien's involvement but was using her as leverage. Clara gasped, wrapping an arm around her daughter. He's targeting us, she whispered. Zara's eyes filled with resolve. Then we don't let him win. We keep the kids safe and we fight smart. Back in Manhattan, Damien received the encrypted alert showing the delivery footage. His stomach dropped. Trevor had escalated beyond surveillance. He had entered their world, inserting danger into Zara's life. And now the little girl he had come to protect was at the center of Trevor's plan. Marcus, Damien said, his voice cold and controlled. "We go live. Move the mobile units closer, cover all exits, and prepare for immediate intervention if necessary." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied promptly. Damien leaned back, a rare flicker of vulnerability crossing his usually stoic expression. He had underestimated Trevor's audacity, and the way the man could manipulate his acts of kindness into a weapon. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Zara gathered the students and teachers together. "We're safe," she told them firmly, hiding the panic in her voice. "No one is going to hurt us. But we have to be smart. Everyone stay inside, away from windows, and follow instructions." Her bravery surprised even Clara. The young girl's instincts, honed through courage and past experiences, were guiding her now. She was not just the recipient of Damien's kindness, she was becoming a protector in her own right. Damien monitored the situation from his office, coordinating security, ready to intervene at the first sign of danger. And then the first twist hit. Trevor appeared not outside but inside the school's perimeter, masked, moving quickly toward the library. His audacity was breathtaking. Damien's pulse raced. Trevor wasn't just watching or threatening, he was trying to force a confrontation, to manipulate Zara into revealing herself, and perhaps to humiliate Damien publicly. "Marcus, go now," Damien ordered. "Get eyes on him but don't confront him. Wait for my signal." The tension was unbearable. Every second felt like an hour. Zara remained calm for the children, guiding them quietly, unaware that Damien was orchestrating a covert defense around them. Then the second twist hit. Trevor triggered a subtle mechanism inside the package. The laptops began to power up, but instead of functioning normally, they displayed a series of messages designed to scare and confuse the staff and children, hinting that Damien had bought their loyalty and that danger was imminent. Zara's heart pounded. She realized that Trevor wasn't just targeting Damien, he was trying to turn her community against him, using fear to manipulate trust. Her instincts kicked in. She quickly shut down the laptops, directed the children to a safer area in the back of the library, and instructed the teachers to lock the doors. The storm of confusion and fear passed, but Zara's mind raced. Trevor was more dangerous than ever, and now he had the power to twist even Damien's good deeds into chaos. By nightfall, Damien had secured the perimeter, Trevor had retreated, and the immediate threat was neutralized, but the impact lingered. Damien realized that his acts of kindness had now become weapons in a game he hadn't anticipated. Yet through it all, Zara's courage shone. She had faced fear head-on, protected the children, and proven that even in the shadow of danger, bravery could prevail. Damien knew, as he watched her from a distance via his secure feed, that she was no longer just a child in need of protection. She was a partner, a catalyst, and the heart of the battle he had stepped into. Across the city, Trevor sat in his penthouse, eyes glinting with calculated malice. "She's brave, too brave," he muttered. "But everyone has a breaking point, and soon, she will have to choose between trust and survival." Brooklyn was quiet that evening, the city settling into a calm that felt almost unnatural after the chaos of the morning. But Damien Caldwell knew better. Trevor Langford was a patient predator. Calm streets meant nothing. Danger could strike at any moment, and he couldn't let his guard down. Not for Zara, not for Clara, and certainly not for himself. Damien sat in his Manhattan office, reviewing the footage from earlier in the day. The events with the laptops were more than a nuisance. They were a message. Trevor had learned how to manipulate Damien's goodwill, turning generosity into fear. And now it was clear he had a new plan, one that would target Zara directly. Marcus, his trusted aide, leaned over the desk. "Sir, she's handling it well, but if Trevor escalates further, we need a contingency for both her safety and her mother's." Damien nodded. "I know. That's why we're stepping up security quietly. No alarms, no obvious presence, but everyone exits, entrances, and perimeters are monitored. Trevor thinks he can provoke fear, but he won't." Back in Brooklyn, Zara sat with Clara in their small kitchen, sipping cocoa. The tension of the morning still lingered, and Clara's worry was palpable. "Mom, I know he's dangerous," Zara said softly, her small hands wrapped around her mug. "But I think we can handle this." We have to. Clara's eyes filled with both fear and pride. You're brave, Zara. But bravery doesn't mean you face danger alone. Zara nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. I know. Damien's helping. I think I can help too. Clara smiled faintly, squeezing her daughter's hand. We'll face this together. Just promise me, no heroics that put you in real danger. Zara nodded, though she couldn't suppress the growing sense of purpose. She had learned something vital. Courage wasn't just facing fear, it was making choices that protected others even when your own heart trembled. That evening, Damien decided it was time to take a personal risk. He drove to Brooklyn, parking a few blocks away to avoid attracting attention. He wanted to see Zara, to reassure her that she wasn't alone, and to personally evaluate the security measures he had implemented. Zara spotted him first, waving excitedly. You came, she whispered, her smile lighting up the dim street. Damien crouched slightly to meet her gaze. Of course, he said softly. I needed to see that you're safe. Zara's face lit with determination. I am. And we're ready for whatever comes next. But we have to be smart. Damien nodded, impressed by her maturity. You've grown so much in just a few days. Your bravery, it's remarkable. They walked quietly through the nearby park, discussing plans and contingencies in hushed tones. Damien explained the security measures, the mobile units, and the precautions they could take if Trevor attempted another strike. Zara listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering ideas. Damien realized something crucial. She wasn't just a child in need of protection anymore. She was becoming an ally, someone capable of making decisions under pressure, someone whose insight he trusted. Yet even as they spoke, Damien couldn't shake the gnawing fear that Trevor was watching. He had underestimated the man before, and he wasn't going to do it again. Later that night, Damien returned to Manhattan, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. He reviewed the live feeds once more, checking the streets around Brooklyn. Everything seemed calm, but he knew better. Calm was often a precursor to chaos. Suddenly, one of the monitors flickered. A figure moved quickly, almost imperceptibly, behind a streetlight. Damien leaned closer, heart racing. Trevor. He had returned, this time even closer to the library's perimeter. Damien clenched his jaw. Trevor wasn't just watching anymore, he was escalating, testing boundaries, probing for weaknesses. Damien immediately contacted Marcus. I need all units in position. Quiet, precise. No mistakes. Yes, sir, Marcus replied, his voice steady but tense. Meanwhile, Zara lay in bed that night, unable to sleep. She thought about the day's events, the laptops, and Trevor's relentless pursuit. Fear was there, yes, but so was determination. I won't let him scare me, she whispered to herself. I won't. Her courage was growing, but Damien knew that Trevor's next move would force her to confront danger in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Across the city, Trevor reviewed footage of Damien and Zara walking through the park. A cruel smirk formed on his lips. You think your little girl can outsmart me? He muttered. She's clever, but everyone has a breaking point. Tomorrow she'll have to choose between trust and survival. And that's when I'll strike. Trevor's words sent a shiver down Damien's spine, even though he knew he was prepared. Trevor was relentless. He was calculating every move, pushing them toward a situation where fear, courage, and loyalty would collide. Damien stared at the monitor, watching Trevor disappear into the shadows. He knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow would change everything. And when it did, Zara would be forced into a moment that could determine not just her safety, but the course of all their lives. The morning air in Brooklyn was crisp, carrying the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from a nearby cafe. On the streets, children hurried to school, and neighbors exchanged familiar greetings. Everything appeared ordinary, peaceful, almost too peaceful. Damien Caldwell knew better. Calm was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with Trevor Langford lurking somewhere nearby. Damien sat in his Manhattan office, multiple screens before him, monitoring live feeds around the library and Zara's neighborhood. He had increased surveillance overnight, added new mobile units, and coordinated with Marcus to cover every exit and vantage point. Yet, despite his meticulous preparation, Damien felt the familiar pang of worry. Trevor wasn't just persistent. He was unpredictable, and today Damien sensed he would escalate. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Zara arrived at the library early, excitement bubbling through her small frame. Today was not just another reading circle. It was the day they planned to start a mentorship program for the younger students. Damien's donations had allowed them to gather supplies and books for the initiative, and Zara was determined to see it succeed. Clara followed closely, her eyes scanning the street as she unlocked the library doors. "Zara, remember what we talked about," she reminded her softly. "Stay alert, but don't let fear control you." Zara nodded, though her heart raced. She had felt Trevor's shadow yesterday, had sensed the danger lingering in quiet corners. But bravery, she reminded herself, wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. As the day progressed, the library buzzed with activity. Younger students gathered around, eager to listen to Zara and the older kids, who helped guide the sessions. Everything seemed to go smoothly, until a delivery arrived. The package was unmarked this time, carried by a courier whose face was hidden under a hood. Clara instinctively felt her stomach tighten. Something about the delivery felt wrong. Zara's eyes narrowed as she approached the package. "Mom, I think this is from him," she whispered. Clara froze. "Don't touch it." But Zara, trusting her instincts and determination, carefully opened the box. Inside, she found a collection of envelopes, each labeled with the names of the students at the library. Alongside them was a note in elegant, chilling handwriting. "Your actions have consequences. Make the right choice or someone you care about will pay." Yeah. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she read the words. Trevor was no longer just observing, he was manipulating, forcing her to consider decisions she had no experience making. Back in Manhattan, Damien's phone buzzed with an alert from the live feed. He immediately recognized the courier's movement as Trevor's handiwork. His stomach tightened. Trevor was testing Zara, measuring how far she would go, attempting to manipulate her trust and courage. "Marcus," Damien said, voice sharp and controlled, "I need eyes on every package, every person approaching the library. And get an override ready for any tampering. Now." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. Damien's mind raced. Trevor's moves were psychological, designed to break trust, sow fear, and force choices. Damien knew he had to stay one step ahead, not just to protect Zara physically but emotionally. Inside the library, Zara examined the envelopes carefully. Some contained small rewards, others harmless items, but one envelope was clearly a trap. It had a device attached that could trigger a small, startling explosion. Nothing lethal, but enough to frighten the children and create chaos. Her pulse raced, but she remained calm. "Mom, I think I know which one it is," she said softly. Using a careful hand, she set it aside, guiding the other envelopes to the students without alarming them. Clara's eyes widened. "Zara, how did you know?" Zara looked at her mother with fierce determination. "I trust my instincts, and I trust what Damien taught me. Trevor wants fear, but we control how we respond." Later that afternoon, Damien arrived in Brooklyn in an unmarked SUV, parking a few blocks away. He watched Zara from a distance, pride and concern warring within him. She was brave, resourceful, and cautious, but Trevor had already forced her into a psychological battlefield. Zara, noticing Damien's presence, gave him a subtle wave. She had managed the situation well, but Damien knew this was only the beginning. Trevor would escalate again, and Zara's trust, and her ability to make the right choices under pressure, would be tested further. That night, Damien reviewed the day's footage and coordinated with Marcus to analyze Trevor's methods. It was clear that Trevor had studied Zara, observing her courage, intelligence, and loyalty. He had planned to exploit it, using fear and moral dilemmas to manipulate her choices. Damien realized something vital. This wasn't just about protection. It was about mentorship, guidance, and preparing Zara for the impossible decisions she might be forced to make. Across the city, Trevor smirked as he reviewed footage of Zara handling the envelopes flawlessly. "She's clever, too clever," he muttered. "Tomorrow the real test begins." And when it does, she will face a choice that could destroy trust and everything Caldwell has built. Brooklyn awoke to a chilly morning, the kind of cold that made the streets glisten with frost under the weak sunlight. The city seemed calm, deceptively quiet, and yet Damien Caldwell knew better. Danger had a way of striking when least expected, and today Trevor Langford was about to test both Zara and Damien in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. Damien was in his Manhattan office, eyes glued to the monitors. Every street, every alley, every pedestrian was being tracked. He had increased the surveillance radius, anticipating Trevor's next move. But even with Marcus and the mobile units in place, Damien felt that sinking, gnawing tension that came with knowing someone unpredictable was stalking his every act of kindness. In Brooklyn, Zara was at the library with Clara, preparing for the day's activities. The mentorship program she had launched was gaining traction. Older students were helping younger ones, reading aloud and fostering a sense of community. Zara's small face was lit with excitement as she guided the group. "Remember, it's about helping each other, not just doing things for yourself," Zara said, her voice confident, almost adult-like in its authority. Clara's eyes filled with pride. "You're doing wonderfully, Zara. But don't forget to stay alert. Trevor isn't far." Zara nodded, her hands busy organizing supplies, but her mind was sharp, scanning the room and windows for any hint of danger. She had learned to trust her instincts, but even she didn't know what Trevor had planned next. Outside the library, Trevor Langford watched from a concealed corner. Today he wasn't going to rely on simple intimidation or psychological tricks. No, today was about forcing a high-stakes decision, testing Zara's courage, judgment, and loyalty to those she cared about. Trevor had arranged for a delivery, a box left at the library steps containing a series of puzzles. The catch: one of the puzzles would trigger an alert to Damien, making him believe Zara was in immediate danger. The goal was simple: manipulate the billionaire's decisions, force him to overreact, and create chaos. Trevor smirked, watching the library through binoculars. "Let's see how brave she really is," he whispered. Inside the library, Zara discovered the package left on the steps. Her heart skipped a beat, not from fear but from awareness that something was amiss. The box had no label, no indication of the sender, and the packaging seemed carefully selected to appear harmless. "Mom, something's not right," Zara whispered. Clara frowned. "Don't touch it. Wait until Damien checks it." Zara hesitated, her hands hovering above the box. She knew that Trevor's traps were rarely direct. He thrived on testing her judgment. And today she realized she might have to make a choice on her own. Damien, monitoring the live feed, noticed the package instantly. His pulse quickened. "Marcus, we have a situation. Package at the library steps. Assess and report immediately. And make sure Zara stays safe." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, already coordinating security units around the building. Damien leaned closer, tension building. He knew that Trevor's traps weren't merely physical. They were psychological, designed to force Zara into making decisions under pressure. Zara took a deep breath, recalling Damien's lessons. Stay calm, trust instincts, and protect others. With careful hands, she opened the box. Inside were envelopes, small puzzles, and a note. "Solve the puzzles wisely, little girl. One wrong move could endanger someone you love." Yeah. Her pulse quickened. She realized that Trevor's game wasn't just about fear. It was about testing her ability to think critically, to act courageously, and to protect the children in her care. Zara's eyes scanned the puzzles carefully. Some were straightforward, simple logic problems. Others were traps designed to mislead, confuse, or provoke panic. She knew she had to act methodically. Minutes passed, each second stretching unbearably. Zara solved one puzzle, then another, carefully analyzing each step. The other students watched, unaware of the stakes, but trusting her guidance. Clara's hands trembled as she watched from the side, proud yet terrified. Meanwhile, Damien monitored her progress, heart pounding with every move she made. He knew the moment she made a mistake, Trevor would escalate. Then, just as Zara was about to solve the final puzzle, the floor beneath her vibrated subtly, a small mechanical device Trevor had hidden inside the box. The vibration wasn't dangerous, but it was enough to make the younger students jump in fear. Zara froze, realizing the trap. Her mind raced. Act quickly, protect the children, or hesitate and risk chaos. With steady hands and a clear mind, Zara directed the students to cover their ears and guided them to a safer corner of the room. She then carefully disarmed the device using one of the tools Damien had suggested they keep for safety during unexpected situations. Clara gasped. "Zara, that was incredible. How did you?" Zara shook her head, her small face serious. "I just stayed calm and thought like Damien would. Trevor wants us to panic, but we didn't." From Manhattan, Damien exhaled slowly, relief and admiration coursing through him. Zara had faced the first true test Trevor had set, and she had passed, not by avoiding fear but by mastering it. Trevor, watching from across the street, narrowed his eyes. His plan had failed, but only partially. He knew this was just the beginning. Zara's courage had impressed him, but it also told him one crucial fact. She would soon be forced into a choice no child should ever face. That night, Damien sat in his office reviewing the day's events. Trevor had escalated, tested Zara, and failed, this time. But in the shadows, a second, more dangerous plan was already in motion. And when it struck, Damien realized there might be no room for mistakes, and Zara would have to face the unthinkable. Brooklyn woke to an unusual stillness that morning. The streets were quieter than usual, the early winter air biting gently at exposed skin. Most residents were oblivious to the storm of danger circling the neighborhood, but Damien Caldwell knew better. Trevor Langford was patient, relentless, and inventive, and today, Damien had a sinking feeling that the little girl who had changed his life would be forced into a decision no child should ever face. Inside the library, Zara prepared for another day of mentorship. The previous day's events had been tense but manageable. She had proven her bravery, outsmarted Trevor's traps, and guided the children safely. Yet a subtle unease lingered. Something in the air told her that today would be different. Clara noticed her daughter's unusual silence. "Zara, you seem worried," she said softly. Zara shook her head. "I'm fine, Mom. Just thinking about the puzzles from yesterday. Trevor, he won't stop. I can feel it." Clara sighed, her worry evident. "You've been so brave, Zara, but I don't want you to have to face something you can't handle." Zara's gaze hardened. "I can handle it. I have to." Meanwhile, Damien watched from Manhattan, monitoring the area around the library. His eyes darted between monitors, noting movement, listening to communications from Marcus, and checking every camera feed. Trevor's psychological games had grown more audacious, and Damien feared the next escalation would target Zara directly. "Marcus," Damien said sharply, "stay alert. If Trevor makes a move, I want it contained immediately. No surprises." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, tension in his voice. Damien's mind raced. Trevor had learned from yesterday. He knew Zara was capable, but that didn't mean he would stop. If anything, her courage would be tested in ways neither Damien nor Zara could anticipate. Around noon, a delivery arrived. This one was different. A small van parked just outside the library, its doors slightly ajar. Clara's heart tightened. She sensed immediately that this wasn't a normal delivery. Zara, too, noticed the subtle irregularity. "Mom, this doesn't feel right," she whispered. Before Clara could respond, a voice called out from inside the van. "Miss Zara, we have a special activity for you and your friends. Just step outside and you'll see." Zara's stomach churned. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they screamed at her now. Danger was near. Clara grabbed her arm. "Stay here. Don't go near it." Zara nodded, but a part of her curiosity, the same spark that had guided her bravery, was tempted. She glanced at the children, their eyes wide with curiosity, waiting for guidance. Back in Manhattan, Damien's monitors caught the van's presence immediately. His pulse quickened. "Marcus, confirm if that van is equipped with any devices. I don't care if it's subtle, check everything." Within moments, the team reported back. "Confirmed, sir. The van has multiple hidden compartments. Trevor is escalating." Damien clenched his jaw. He knew that whatever Trevor had planned, it was designed to force Zara into an impossible choice. Leave the safety of the library to protect others or remain inside and risk collateral harm. Inside the library, Zara assessed the situation. Her mind raced as she calculated risk, recalling every lesson Damien had taught her about courage, trust, and protecting others. She realized that Trevor's goal was not just fear, it was to manipulate decisions to see how far she could be pushed. Taking a deep breath, she addressed the children. Listen to me carefully. I need you to stay inside. Don't go outside for anything until we know it's safe. The children nodded, though some trembled. Zara's eyes darted toward the van, then back to Clara. I think I need to go out and see what he's doing, she admitted softly. Clara's face drained of color. Zara, no. You don't know what's out there. I do, Zara replied firmly. I have to protect them. That's what Trevor wants to stop. I can't let fear win. Minutes later, Zara stepped carefully outside, approaching the van. Damien watched her every move, his stomach in knots. He knew that Trevor's escalation was calculated to create fear and hesitation. One wrong step, and Zara could be trapped. As she reached the van, the doors swung open, revealing envelopes, devices, and another note. Choose wisely. One envelope will save someone you care about. The others won't. Tick-tock, little girl. Yeah. Zara's heart raced. She had to decide which envelope to open, knowing that a single choice could protect or endanger someone she loved. It was the unthinkable test of courage and trust Damien had feared. Inside Manhattan, Damien gritted his teeth, whispering to himself, "She can do this. She has to." He coordinated with Marcus to ensure that no harm could come from the devices in the envelopes, but even knowing that, the psychological pressure on Zara was real. Zara's small hands trembled slightly as she studied the envelopes. Her mind weighed probabilities, observed subtle differences, and relied on intuition. Her bravery, intelligence, and trust in Damien guided her decision. Slowly, carefully, she selected one envelope and opened it. Inside was a key card, a note explaining how to disarm all devices inside the van safely. She had chosen correctly. The remaining envelopes contained harmless items, designed only to create panic, but Trevor's point had been made. She had faced an impossible choice and emerged with courage intact. Across the city, Trevor watched the live feed of Zara's decision, his smirk fading into something darker. Clever girl, but the next choice will break her, he whispered, already plotting his second, more devastating trap. The Brooklyn skyline was bathed in late afternoon sunlight, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. At first glance, everything seemed calm. Children played on sidewalks, neighbors chatted outside their homes, and the city moved at its usual rhythm. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, the tension lingered, a silent reminder of the high-stakes game playing out between Damien Caldwell and Trevor Langford. Inside the library, Zara exhaled slowly, her small shoulders sagging with relief. The envelopes had been sorted, the devices disarmed, and the children were safe. She had faced the first truly impossible choice Trevor had set, and she had succeeded. Yet the emotional toll was heavy. Clara approached, wrapping her arms around Zara. "Sweetheart, you did it. You saved everyone." Her voice trembled with a mix of pride and lingering fear. Zara nodded, trying to steady her emotions. "I did what I had to do, but Trevor isn't done. I can feel it." Clara's eyes filled with concern. "I know. But you're not alone. Damien is watching, and he won't let anything happen to you." Meanwhile, Damien remained in Manhattan, glued to the monitors, watching the aftermath of Zara's decisions. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by unease. Trevor's tactics had grown more dangerous, and Damien knew that this was only the beginning of an escalating psychological war. "Marcus, this was a warning," Damien muttered. "He's testing her, testing me, and he's going to escalate further. I need contingency plans, more covert than ever." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, already coordinating additional surveillance and security measures. Damien leaned back, eyes narrowed. The stakes had shifted. This was no longer just a game of fear, it was a test of loyalty, courage, and trust, with Zara at the center. Across the city, Trevor Langford sat in his penthouse, reviewing the live feeds. A flicker of frustration crossed his face. Zara had succeeded, showing intelligence, bravery, and decisiveness beyond her years. But Trevor was undeterred. "She's clever, too clever," he murmured. "But every hero has a breaking point. And soon, she'll face a choice that will hurt more than anyone can imagine." Trevor's next plan was already forming, a trap designed to force Zara and Damien into direct confrontation. Unlike the envelopes or mechanical devices, this plan required manipulation, timing, and cruelty. It would test not just courage but morality. Back in Brooklyn, Zara tried to return to her normal routine. Mentorship sessions continued, and the children were oblivious to the psychological warfare that had unfolded. Yet Zara couldn't shake the lingering tension. Every sound outside, every shadow, reminded her that Trevor was still out there, watching, planning. Clara noticed her daughter's unease. "Zara, it's okay to be scared," she said softly. "Courage doesn't mean never being afraid. It means facing fear when you have to." Zara nodded, drawing strength from her mother's words. "I know, Mom. But I have to stay ready. Trevor will try again, and I won't let him hurt anyone." Damien, still monitoring, realized something crucial. Zara had passed the first test, but the psychological impact was deeper than anyone realized. Trevor had forced her to confront fear, responsibility, and decision-making under extreme pressure. This was more than a game, it was preparation for what was coming. Damien picked up his secure line and called Zara and Clara. "I'm proud of you both," he said. "But Trevor's not finished. I need you to stay vigilant. Trust your instincts and trust each other. The next move will be bigger." Zara's voice was calm but determined. "I understand, Mr. Caldwell. I won't let him win." Clara added softly, "We're ready. Together." That evening, Damien reviewed Trevor's past moves and began analyzing patterns. Each escalation had been methodical, psychological, and designed to manipulate decisions and emotions. The billionaire realized that Trevor wasn't just after humiliation. He wanted control, leverage, and the satisfaction of proving that kindness could be exploited. Damien knew he needed to anticipate the next move. He deployed additional mobile units around Brooklyn, increased covert surveillance, and prepared contingency plans for any eventuality. Every street, every alley, every potential point of entry was monitored. As night fell, a final alert flashed on Damien's monitor. A vehicle moving suspiciously close to the library, but this one was different. It wasn't just observation, it was positioning. Trevor was preparing his next high-stakes move, one that would directly challenge Damien's ability to protect Zara and the choices she would have to make. Damien clenched his jaw, aware that the psychological war was evolving into something far more dangerous. He leaned back, thoughts racing as he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, we face the real test. And we'll be ready." Across the city, Trevor watched the live feed of the library from a shadowed van. "Clever girl," he muttered. "But soon, the true impossible choice begins. And one of them will pay the price." The night air in Brooklyn was unnervingly still. Streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, giving even familiar corners an air of menace. Damien Caldwell sat in his Manhattan office, eyes glued to the monitors, analyzing every feed from the surveillance units deployed around the library and Zara's neighborhood. His instincts screamed that tonight, Trevor Langford's escalation would go beyond psychological games. It would be personal, calculated, and dangerous. Meanwhile, in the library, Zara sat quietly with Clara and a few older students, organizing books and materials for the mentorship program. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, strategies, and instincts honed through previous encounters with Trevor. Clara noticed her daughter's tense demeanor. "Zara, are you sure you're ready for whatever comes next?" Zara met her mother's gaze, determination blazing in her dark brown eyes. "I have to be. Trevor won't stop until he forces us to make a mistake. I won't let that happen." Clara squeezed her daughter's shoulder, pride and worry mingling in her expression. "Just remember you're not alone. Mr. Caldwell and Marcus are watching." Across the city, Trevor Langford observed the library through a high-powered surveillance device. He had been planning his next move for days, a plan designed to force both Damien and Zara into a single impossible decision. This was no longer about envelopes, puzzles, or mechanical traps. Tonight's game would challenge their morality, trust, and courage simultaneously. Trevor's plan was intricate, a staged kidnapping scenario designed to make Damien believe Zara was in immediate danger. At the same time, he had set a parallel test for Zara, a choice that would force her to act quickly, knowing that any one wrong step could endanger someone she loved. Trevor's smirk reflected his cruel anticipation. Caldwell thinks he can protect her, but when the choice is real, we'll see how brave she truly is, he whispered. In Manhattan, Damien's monitors flickered. One of the surveillance units reported unusual activity near the library, a van suspiciously positioned, with lights dimmed, seemingly empty. Damien's pulse quickened. Marcus, check every possible device inside that van. And prep the rapid response team. If Trevor is making a move, I want no surprises. Yes, sir, Marcus replied, urgency in his voice. Damien's hands tightened into fists. He had prepared for threats before, but the psychological stakes tonight were higher than ever. Trevor wasn't just testing courage, he was attempting to manipulate instinct and morality simultaneously. Inside Brooklyn, Zara noticed a faint humming sound coming from the library's back alley. Her instincts screamed danger. She motioned for the students to remain calm and quietly led Clara toward the side exit to investigate. There, they found a small cage with a life-size doll dressed like one of the younger students. A speaker attached to the cage crackled to life, and Trevor's voice echoed through the alley. Zara, test. Choose wisely, open the door and risk the consequences, or leave it and watch everything you've worked for unravel. Zara froze, heart pounding. She understood immediately, this was no longer a simple test of logic. It was a moral decision designed to trigger panic, hesitation, and fear. One wrong move could ruin the trust between her and Damien, or worse, create chaos that Trevor could exploit. In Manhattan, Damien watched the live feed, heart racing. The cage was a trap, yes, but Trevor's true aim was psychological. He wanted Damien to panic, to overreact, and possibly put Zara in real danger through rushed action. Marcus, Damien barked, prepare the rapid intervention team. I'm going in if anything happens, but I need Zara to stay calm. Every second counts. Yes, sir, Marcus responded, already coordinating units to converge on the library from multiple directions. Back in Brooklyn, Zara's mind worked furiously. She recalled Damien's lessons. Trust your instincts, assess risk, and protect others before yourself. Carefully, she examined the cage and the lock mechanism. It was sophisticated but not impossible. She realized that Trevor wanted her to panic and make a hasty decision, but she had the knowledge and courage to act deliberately. Clara whispered, Zara, you can't risk your life for a doll? Zara shook her head. It's not just a doll, Mom. It's about showing Trevor that we don't give in to fear. I have to try. Zara carefully manipulated the lock, her fingers steady despite her racing heart. Damien watched on the monitors, breath held. One false move and Trevor could trigger the hidden mechanism to simulate danger or create chaos. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the lock clicked open. Zara carefully removed the doll and examined the setup. No harmful devices, just a psychological test. She had succeeded. Damien exhaled slowly, pride and relief washing over him. Zara had faced the second major challenge, and she had done so with intelligence, courage, and calmness beyond her years. But Trevor was not finished. Across the city, he scowled at the monitors. Impressive, but the next test will break them, he muttered. He had already set in motion a plan for the ultimate choice, one that would target Damien's wealth, Zara's safety, and the emotional trust between them both. As Zara returned inside the library, relieved and proud, Damien realized a hidden signal from Trevor's devices suggested a new trap was already in motion. Tonight, nothing would be safe, and the unthinkable choice was coming sooner than anyone expected. The warning came at 2:17 a.m. A sharp, piercing alert cut through the quiet of Damien Caldwell's Manhattan penthouse, jolting him from his chair. Every monitor in his command room flashed red simultaneously, an alert that had never gone off before. Damien's heart dropped into his stomach. Trevor Langford had activated Protocol Black. Marcus's voice came through the secure line, tense and urgent. Sir, we've confirmed it. Trevor has initiated a multi-location event. It's not a bluff. Damien stood instantly. Explain. He's targeting your assets publicly and Zara privately, at the same time. Damien's breath slowed, his mind sharpening. This was it. Trevor's final move. Not fear. Not intimidation. Exposure. In Brooklyn, Zara woke suddenly, her heart pounding. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. The air in the apartment felt heavier, charged. She slipped out of bed and moved toward the window. Then her phone vibrated. An unknown number. One message. Good morning, hero. Today the world learns what kindness really costs. Her hands trembled. Across the city, Damien's screens exploded with headlines. Billionaire called while linked to secret payments in Brooklyn. Questions raised about child involvement. Is this philanthropy or manipulation? Trevor had done it. He had leaked distorted footage, edited financial records, and fabricated narratives, making it appear as though Damien had been using Zara as a publicity shield, a pawn in a calculated image campaign. Stock prices plummeted in real time. Board members began calling. Sponsors froze accounts. Damien didn't flinch. Marcus, he said quietly, this was never about money. No, sir, Marcus replied. It's about forcing you to choose. Zara's phone buzzed again. A video. It showed the library. Empty. Dark. Then another angle. Clara, her mother, walking home alone earlier that evening. Then text appeared. You tell the truth, or she pays the price. Zara's knees buckled. This wasn't a puzzle. This wasn't a test. This was real. Damien's phone rang. Trevor. Damien answered without hesitation. You've crossed the line. Trevor chuckled softly. No, Damien. I erased it. The line between hero and villain, gone. Now the world decides. You're threatening a child. I'm giving her a voice, Trevor replied coldly. She tells the truth, that you orchestrated everything. Or your empire burns and her world collapses with it. Damien's jaw tightened. If you hurt her. I won't have to, Trevor interrupted. She'll choose. The line went dead. In Brooklyn, Zara sat on the floor, her back against the couch, phone clutched in her hands. Tears streamed silently down her face. Clara knelt beside her. Zara, what is it? Zara looked up at her mother, eyes filled with terror and resolve. He wants me to lie, she whispered. To say Mr. Caldwell used me. If I don't, he'll hurt you. Clara's face drained of color, but then something extraordinary happened. She smiled. Not with fear. With strength. Oh, baby, Clara said softly, pulling Zara into her arms. Then you already know the answer. Zara sobbed. I don't want you to get hurt. Clara cupped her daughter's face. Courage doesn't mean no one gets scared. It means the truth matters more than fear. Damien watched the live feed from Brooklyn, heartbreaking. For the first time in his life, his wealth meant nothing. He couldn't buy this moment away. He whispered to himself, please, let her be stronger than this world. At 6 a.m., news vans surrounded the library. Trevor had arranged it all. A public stage. A microphone placed deliberately at the entrance. Zara stepped forward, small against the crowd, cameras flashing. Damien watched live. The world watched. The reporter asked gently, Zara, were you pressured by Damien Caldwell? Was his kindness real, or was it part of a plan? Zara closed her eyes. She thought of the card that declined. The groceries. The quiet help. The safety. The belief. She opened her eyes. And spoke. He never asked for anything, she said, her voice shaking, but clear. He helped us when no one was watching. When his card declined, I helped him, not because he was rich, but because he was human. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tears streamed down faces. Zara continued, stronger now. If telling the truth costs him everything, then it's worth it. Because kindness shouldn't need permission. Damien broke down. Across the city, Trevor stared at the screen, frozen. For the first time. His plan failed. As applause erupted and the crowd rallied around Zara, Trevor's phone vibrated with a final message from an unknown source. You lost. And somewhere deep in the system, law enforcement began closing in. The city of Brooklyn buzzed with energy as news of Zara's statement spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with praise for the little girl who had spoken truth to power, and news outlets scrambled to report the unfolding story. Damien Caldwell, sitting in his Manhattan penthouse, allowed himself a rare moment of relief, but it was tempered by exhaustion. The battle was over, yes, but the emotional toll on everyone involved was undeniable. Zara sat in the library, surrounded by the older students and a few reporters, as Clara gently brushed her daughter's hair back from her face. You were incredible, Zara, Clara whispered, voice thick with emotion. You were brave, stronger than anyone could have imagined. Zara's small shoulders sagged as she exhaled, a mix of relief and fatigue washing over her. I was scared, Mom, she admitted quietly. I didn't know what to do, but I had to trust him and myself. Clara smiled, squeezing her hand. That's courage. And bravery is always about choices, not the absence of fear. Across the city, Trevor Langford sat in his high-rise, staring at the news feed. His carefully orchestrated plan had unraveled in front of millions. The headlines no longer cast Damien as a manipulative billionaire. They celebrated Zara's courage and honesty, highlighting Damien's consistent acts of kindness. Trevor's smirk faded, replaced by disbelief and rage. He had underestimated one crucial element: the power of human truth, untainted by fear or manipulation. Meanwhile, Damien moved quietly through the streets of Brooklyn, stepping into the library as reporters slowly packed up. He knelt in front of Zara, who looked up at him with eyes still shimmering with unshed tears. You were incredible, Damien said softly, voice thick with emotion. I've never seen courage like that. You trusted yourself, and you trusted me. Zara blushed, smiling faintly. I just did what I had to do. You helped us, Mr. Caldwell. And I wanted to help you too. Damien placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You helped me more than you'll ever know. You reminded me why kindness matters even when the world tries to twist it into weakness. Back in Manhattan, Marcus coordinated the legal and financial fallout. Trevor Langford's manipulations had not gone unnoticed by law enforcement. Multiple agencies were now involved, investigating the falsified claims, the psychological traps, and the financial distortions Trevor had attempted. Within hours, legal action was underway. Trevor, isolated in his penthouse, realized the full magnitude of his defeat. Not only had his plan failed, but his reputation and freedom was on the line. For the first time in his life, he felt the consequences of underestimating human courage and integrity. That evening, Damien returned Zara and Clara to their apartment. The streets were quieter now, the chaos of media and social attention settling into a more manageable hum. Clara turned to Damien. I can't thank you enough. You saved us, not just from him but from fear itself. Damien smiled softly. No, Clara. It was Zara who saved all of us. She faced the impossible choice, spoke the truth, and reminded the world what courage looks like. Zara sat quietly, a small smile forming on her lips. So, the card that declined that day, she began hesitantly. Damien chuckled gently, realizing she remembered the very beginning. Yes, that card. It wasn't a mistake. It was a small reminder that even someone like me, even a billionaire, sometimes needs help too. And that day, your decision to step forward, that was the start of everything. Zara's eyes widened in realization. So, helping you that day, it started all of this? Yes, Damien said softly. It showed me that kindness isn't just about giving. It's about trust, courage, and believing in people, no matter how small or unlikely the moment. Over the next few days, the media coverage shifted from sensationalism to admiration. News outlets celebrated Zara's bravery, Damien's genuine philanthropy, and the little girl's ability to inspire an entire city. The mentorship program at the library received widespread support, donations poured in, and local authorities commended both Damien and Zara for their courage and integrity. Trevor Langford, meanwhile, faced formal charges, legal restrictions, and mounting scrutiny. The carefully constructed empire he had relied on to manipulate others crumbled, and the realization that true courage could outmatch cunning left him isolated and defeated. One quiet evening, as Damien walked Zara and Clara home, he reflected on the journey. From the moment the card declined at the grocery store to the chaos orchestrated by Trevor, every act of trust, courage, and kindness had led to this outcome. Zara looked up at him, a small but confident smile on her face. "I learned something," she said. "Bravery isn't just about facing fear. It's about doing what's right, even when it's scary." Damien nodded, eyes glinting with pride. "Exactly. And today you reminded me, and the world, why that matters more than anything else." As they turned the corner, Damien noticed a small envelope slipped under the apartment door. No note. No sender. Just a single word written in bold letters. "Remember?" A shiver ran down Damien's spine, but this time it wasn't fear. It was a reminder that even in victory, courage and vigilance are lifelong companions. And for Zara, it was a call to continue being the unthinkable hero she had proven herself to be. Brooklyn awoke to a crisp morning that felt different, lighter somehow, as if the city itself had breathed a sigh of relief. The chaos of the past weeks had settled, leaving behind the calm of a community that had been reminded of the power of courage, truth, and kindness. At the library, Zara moved quietly among the students, organizing books and materials for the mentorship program. But today was special. Today, the local council, media, and community leaders had gathered to officially recognize her efforts and courage. The little girl who had once hesitated to step forward in a grocery store now stood at the center of a movement she had helped inspire. Clara adjusted Zara's scarf and smiled, her eyes glistening with pride. "Look at you," she whispered. "All of this, you've done it." Zara shrugged, a small, humble smile forming. "I just tried to do what was right. And everyone else helped too." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. "You've inspired more than just the kids here. You've inspired the whole city." Damien arrived quietly, slipping through the back entrance to avoid the media frenzy. He watched Zara interact with the children, her confidence shining through. She was no longer just the little girl who had helped him with the declined card. She was a leader, a symbol of bravery and integrity. He knelt to her level. "Zara," he said softly, "do you realize what you've done? Not just for yourself or the library, but for everyone who needed courage to stand up." Zara's eyes met his. I didn't think I could do it. But I had to. And I had you, and Mom, and everyone who believed in us." Damien smiled. "That's exactly it. Courage grows when people believe in each other. And you made everyone believe." The ceremony began with local officials and journalists paying tribute to Zara's courage. Plaques, flowers, and cameras surrounded her as she stepped forward to speak. Her voice, steady and confident, carried across the room. "I learned that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing to do what's right, even when the fear feels too big. And kindness can change the world if we trust it enough to act." Applause filled the room, echoing the sentiment of the community. The mentorship program received additional funding, support, and volunteers, ensuring that Zara's influence would continue to grow. Meanwhile, news of Trevor Langford's downfall spread. Legal authorities had completed their investigation, revealing the extent of his manipulations, false accusations, and attempts to exploit Damien's generosity. Trevor faced multiple criminal charges, including fraud, harassment, and endangerment. In court, his empire crumbled as evidence of his schemes was presented. He had underestimated the combination of courage, integrity, and community support that Damien, Zara, and Clara embodied. For the first time, Trevor Langford was powerless, watching the consequences of his actions unfold in real time. Damien took Zara and Clara for a quiet walk afterward, away from the media attention. The city streets felt calmer now, almost like a sanctuary after the storm. "Do you understand now," Damien asked Zara, "why that day at the grocery store was so important? Why your choice mattered more than you knew?" Zara nodded. "Yes, that small decision, it started everything. It showed that helping someone, even when it seems small, can change a lot. I see that now. Clara smiled, wrapping an arm around both Damien and Zara. And it's only just the beginning. The world will need more courage like yours. That evening, the library was quiet. Zara looked around at the shelves of books, the colorful artwork from the children, and the small trophies and plaques displayed. She realized that this place, this safe, welcoming space, was more than a library. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and community. Damien knelt beside her once more. You know, Zara, your bravery has reminded me why kindness is worth every risk. And not just for the world, but for yourself, for your family, and for people who can't speak up. Zara smiled, leaning against his shoulder. I want to help more. I want to keep doing good no matter what. Damien nodded, a proud smile lighting his face. That's the spirit. And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way. Outside, Brooklyn glimmered in the late afternoon sun. The city had witnessed fear, manipulation, and uncertainty, but it had also witnessed courage, truth, and humanity. The battle with Trevor Langford had ended, but the story of Zara, Damien, and Clara served as a reminder that even in a world full of challenges, choices rooted in integrity could triumph over darkness. And somewhere in the city, a single envelope rested under the library's front door. Unlike before, this one contained no threats. Instead, a handwritten note read, "For the unthinkable hero who reminded us all that courage changes the world." Zara picked it up, her small hands clutching it tightly. She looked at Damien and Clara, smiling. I think this is just the beginning of what we can do. Damien nodded, heart full. Yes, Zara. The beginning of everything. Though Trevor's immediate threat had been neutralized, the note hinted at a future filled with challenges, opportunities, and continued acts of courage. A promise that Zara's journey as an unthinkable hero was far from over. The Brooklyn skyline glowed softly in the golden evening light, casting warm shadows across the streets. The city had moved on from the chaos of the past weeks, but the lessons learned lingered like a quiet hum of hope. Damien Caldwell stood outside the library, watching Zara interact with the children, her laughter and confidence filling the room. From the first day when his card had declined at the grocery store, to the life-altering encounters with Trevor Langford, this journey had been about more than wealth or influence. It had been about courage, trust, and the transformative power of small, kind actions. Zara sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children as she guided them through a reading circle. She no longer felt the weight of fear, only responsibility, inspiration, and purpose. Each child hung on her every word, their eyes wide with curiosity and admiration. Clara watched quietly from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride. Look at her, she whispered to Damien. She's grown so much, and she hasn't even realized how much of an impact she's making. Damien smiled, his gaze warm. She's a natural leader, Clara. She's not just brave, she's wise, compassionate, and unafraid to do what's right. Zara looked up and caught Damien's eyes. You know, I think I finally understand, she said softly. Courage isn't about big acts. It's about the small choices, the ones that seem unimportant until you realize they change everything. Damien nodded. Exactly. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can spark a chain reaction that changes lives, including your own. Outside, the community had taken notice. Neighbors volunteered at the library, local businesses donated supplies, and media outlets highlighted the mentorship program as a model for communities everywhere. Zara's courage had inspired more than headlines. It had inspired action, participation, and hope. Damien observed it all quietly. He thought back to the first time he had encountered Zara, the little girl whose kindness had gone unnoticed by others but had changed everything for him. That moment, trivial at the time, had sparked a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. Meanwhile, Trevor Langford faced the consequences of his actions. Legal proceedings had begun, exposing the extent of his manipulations and cruelty. Damien knew that Trevor's downfall was not only a result of his strategic planning but also of Zara's courage and truthfulness. Damien reflected silently. True power wasn't measured by wealth, influence, or fear. It was measured by integrity, compassion, and the courage to act rightly even when threatened. Back in the library, Zara gathered the children around for a closing circle. I want you to remember something important, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Kindness isn't weak. Courage isn't just for grown-ups. Every choice you make, no matter how small, has the power to change someone's life. You can be brave even when you're scared, and you can help even when it seems like nobody's watching. The children nodded, absorbing every word. Some were small, some were timid, but all carried a spark of inspiration. Clara placed a hand on Zara's shoulder. You've done more than you know, Zara. You've reminded everyone here that even a little person can make a huge difference. Zara smiled, her heart full. I just want to keep helping. Every day if I can. Damien stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her back. Then we'll do it together. We'll show the world that kindness, courage, and integrity aren't just ideas, they're actions that matter. And your story, it's only the beginning. For a moment, all three of them stood silently, taking in the scene. The children, the library, the community buzzing with hope, and the quiet promise of a better future. Even the note left by an anonymous admirer under the library door, the one that had read, "For the unthinkable hero who reminded us all that courage changes the world," felt like a seal on their journey. It wasn't a threat this time, but a reminder that the path of courage, though challenging, was eternal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Damien reflected on the journey. From a declined card at a small grocery store to facing one of the most manipulative men he had ever encountered, every moment had been a lesson in humility, courage, and trust. And at the center of it all had been Zara, a little girl who had done the unthinkable, inspired a city, and reminded everyone, rich or poor, adult or child, that doing the right thing always mattered. Zara looked up at the sky, her eyes sparkling. I think this is just the beginning, she said softly. Damien smiled, nodding. Yes, Zara. The beginning of everything. The world outside the library might have seemed ordinary, but inside, and in the hearts of everyone they had touched, something extraordinary had taken root. A story of courage, integrity, and hope had begun, and it would continue to grow, one small, brave act at a time. As night fell over Brooklyn, a gentle wind rustled through the library windows, carrying with it a quiet sense of promise. Somewhere in the city, countless others were inspired to act with courage and kindness, proof that one small, unthinkable act could truly change the world. Subscribe for more real stories with unexpected endings. You don't want to miss the next one.